Delta uses this airline to operate some of its regional jets. And that gets us to flight risk. That's the focus of tonight's angle. It keeps happening.
2 people dead after the FAA said this occurred in a mid-air collision right here at the Marana Airport.
That was this morning, right outside of Tucson, and that made it 5 crashes in 1 month. Now, late January, of course, here in D.C., we saw the worst American aviation disaster in over 23 years. An Army helicopter collided with an American Airlines jet, 67 people dead. Now, only a day later in Philly, a medevac plane came down from the sky like a missile. 7 dead, 19 injured. Then last week in Scottsdale, 1 pilot on a private plane is dead after they veered off the runway and crashed into a business jet. And on Monday night in Toronto, that terrifying video of a Delta jet that flipped over at landing. Now, miraculously, no one died, but questions are swirling about how this could have happened. So what on earth is going on? Americans are worried, understandably so, especially when we seem to get information in dribs and drabs about how this is happening. To restore trust in our aviation system, we need total transparency. Now, last week, regarding that horrific D.C. crash, the NTSB offered only a preliminary finding.
CVR data from the Black Hawk indicated that the portion of the transmission stating the CRJ was circling may not have been received by the Black Hawk crew.
Okay. How do they not know if this is a problem at this point in the tower, or was it in the cockpit? We don't know. But we do know that we need to get a handle on this, and fast, because the flying public must be reassured. And who can blame them? Because under Biden, the FAA, the U.S. military, and corporate America elevated DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, to deity status. And by the way, that included Delta Airlines.
I went into a meeting and I was the most junior person there. And I looked around the table and it was full of women. And that's when I really realized this is an agency that can empower women and grow them and make and have them become leaders.
How reassuring. And we certainly know that under Biden and Harris, DEI was enshrined at every level of government. That was a top priority for them. Now, recall the rampant speculation when there was a delay in announcing the name of that female Black Hawk pilot who was one of the 3 crew members tragically lost on that helicopter when it collided with the American regional jet. Meanwhile, the 2 male pilots' names were released within just hours of the crash. Now, most of the female pilots' social media had been scrubbed, we learned about in the interim, which, of course, just led to more speculation. Again, whatever the truth is, the public has a right to know. So is this series of aviation nightmares, is it all just really a coincidence? Or have we lowered standards because we lost pilots during COVID, remember the vax mandate, or did we somehow lose pilots to meet DEI goals? Again, we need answers. But my favorite moment of the day came early this morning on CBS when Gayle King, in an interview with the Delta CEO, tried to blame Trump's FAA staffing cuts on this.
After looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gayle. The reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions.
Oops. Next time, buy a vowel or call Oprah. Now, we shouldn't be surprised, though, because when Gayle's show prep is always the anti-Trump echo chamber, of course, that's what she's going to say.
This is going to yet again raise the concern about FAA staffing, air traffic control staffing.
Hundreds of FAA employees have been laid off as part of Elon Musk going through all the federal agencies.
I have been panicking over all this insanity with these planes. Yeah. Let's start with the string of mass firings by Elon Musk's DOGE.
I feel like we're living in some kind of chaos right now.
Totally, Joy. Well, they're just taking, again, their cues from their unofficial bosses.
The FAA. The more Donald Trump and DOGE indiscriminately hack away at public agencies, the greater harm to Americans' well-being and even their safety.
Of course, even before that Toronto crash, Eric Swalwell said that all the crashes are Trump's fault. But all this does beg the question, is there something we are doing with these critical positions that is making the skies more dangerous? How could that Toronto scene have unfolded the way it did? Matthew Buckley was an F-18 and a commercial airline pilot. He says the pilot should have been able to slow that aircraft down.
If you've ever seen a crash like this on a regular runway with no snow, that fireball eventually catches up to the airplane as it stops and fuels all over the place. This could have been a hell of a lot worse, but thank God it actually rolls in the snow. You can actually see the fire more or less go out. So in this case, the snow actually saved a lot of lives.
Would the pilots have enough warning if they were coming into contact with the ground too quickly?
Absolutely, Bill.
Oh. And what do we know about the pilots in the cockpit that day? We'll find out. The bottom line is we should never have to even discuss whether diversity, equity, inclusion was a factor in any critical role, but especially in the cockpit. If the best pilots are indeed women or they're minorities, great, whatever. That's fantastic. But job placement should be based on merit, period. Same with fellowships in medical school or in any other area of life where life and death literally is on the line. Now, Donald Trump is committed to eradicating DEI in government hiring and, of course, through our educational system where any federal funds are involved. Good. It's not a moment too soon. Objective measures of skill, excellence, and performance. That should always be our guide, not skin color, not sexual preference, not gender. And yes, our lives depend on it. And that's the angle. Joining me now.
When something's broken, who do you call?
My T-shirt says tech support because I'm here to provide the president with technology support. And now that may seem like, well, is that a silly thing? But actually, it's a very important thing because the president will make these executive orders, which are very sensible and good for the country, but then they don't get implemented. You know, what we're doing here is one of the biggest functions of the DOGE team is just making sure that the presidential executive orders are actually carried out.
Washington's been broken for decades, and Washington's fighting to stay that way. Because when things don't work, you can't find the money. The government's living in the dark ages. They have rotary phones, microfiche, retirement caves, and computer software from the 60s. And 80-year-old politicians who don't even know how to use a computer, and they don't care. Because they just use their iPhones to call, text, and see what their high school classmates are doing on Facebook. It's time to show a little humility and ask for a little help from the younger generation.
He's got some very brilliant young people working for him that dress much worse than him, actually.
Yeah,
they dress in just T-shirts. You wouldn't know they have 180 IQ.
Wait a minute. So he's your tech support.
No, he is.
I actually
but
literally
he's
am
much
tech
more
support.
than that. Yeah.
I literally am tech support, though. But
he gets it done. He's a leader.
Yeah.
He really is. He gets it done. I know every businessman. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the smart ones, the lucky ones. I know them. This guy's he's a brilliant guy. He's a great guy. He's got tremendous imagination and scientific imagination. This guy's somebody that really cares for the country. And I saw that very early on. I saw it really a long time ago when I got to know him. He's a very different kind of a character.
Elon's trying to unboomer the government. It's like going to your grandparents' house, throwing out their VCR and their stacks of tapes, just downloading Netflix for them. Here, Grandpa, you just hit this button here and press select. And by the way, give me your phone because you don't use all those apps. And please stop sending your social security number to Nigerians. DC insiders say, quote, this is not the same government it was a month ago. It's two billionaires with an army of whiz kids using AI to finally shine a spotlight on where our money's been going. The government's been balancing the checkbook longhand in a black ledger that no one's allowed to see. We can't have the golden age without living in the modern age.
They sign a contract in a government agency, and it has 3 months, and the guy leaves that signed the contract, and nobody else is there, and they pay the contract for 10 years.
Yeah.
So the guy is getting checks for years and years and years, and he's telling his family, obviously, maybe it was crooked, maybe he paid to get the contract, or maybe he paid that they didn't terminate it. But, you know, we have contracts that go forever, and they've been going for years, and they're supposed to end in 3 months or 5 months or 2 years or something, and they go forever. So the guy is either crooked, you know, where he knew this was going to happen, or he's crooked because he's getting payments that he knows he shouldn't be getting. But they're finding things like that. They're finding things far worse than that.
DOGE found a $26 million contract to help Guatemala go green. Guatemala is already green. Half the country's rainforest. There's not a lot of Chevy Suburbans down there. You know how people get around? They walk. Nothing greener than walking. Another contract, $73 million to decarbonize Africa. Africa hasn't even been carbonized. How do you decarbonize something that's never been carbonized? We can't even build electric car charging stations here. We're going to build them in Africa? $83 million to help Nigeria transition to low-carbon electricity. Windmills in Nigeria. Awesome. $3.5 million for DEI scholarships in Burma. Isn't everyone in Burma DEI? You know what diversity is in Burma? White. Did we give white scholarships in Burma? Maybe they were really good at squash. DOGE has a big old magnifying glass and is finding out everything. And when you boil it down, it's just a math problem. If the numbers don't add up, it's out.
Are you definitively getting rid of the penny?
Brett, I've got to say that President Trump wants to make the penny extinct, and that's part of the cost savings. It costs about 3 cents to make 1 cent, and even in Washington, that math doesn't work.
It costs 3 cents to make 1 cent, and we've been minting pennies for decades. No one else thought it was stupid until Trump. Well, was the penny lobby too powerful? Big Copper got the Senate drunk and took him pheasant hunting. DOGE found 4.5 million active credit cards in the hands of government bureaucrats. And last year, they racked up $40 billion in charges. They probably just paid the monthly minimums, too, and got wrecked by interest. The government has twice as many credit cards as federal employees. So DOGE is cutting up the credit cards, and Democrats are calling that Fort Sumter.
I'm very reluctant to, engage in too much hyperbole here, but I think this is increasingly becoming the most serious moment since the Civil War. I just think it's a miracle that we've lasted as long as we have.
Big balls, looking at your balance sheet isn't Gettysburg. Are Democrats going to secede from the Union again? We already have rebels yelling.
More funding, not less. End research funding theft. More funding, not less.
Hey, hey, RFK, hands off the FTA. Hey, hey, RFK, we remember JFK. Fascism is a virus too, and the people who are out here fighting in sub-freezing temperatures, they are the antibodies. We are the antibodies. And my friends, a rally a day keeps the fascists away.
I thought Democrats didn't believe in antibodies. Had to get the shot anyway, even if you just had the Rona. And if having a balanced budget's fascist, that makes Bill Clinton Mussolini. Schumer said he's never seen Democrats so aroused, and I believe him.
Elon, if you're watching, come through, boo, because you haven't shown up to the DOGE subcommittee yet.
So now Trump has two daddies, Putin and Elon Musk.
I can remember back in the day of Obamacare, Republicans were saying, do you want Barack Obama and George Soros to have access to your medical records? Yeah. And it led to Republicans losing their minds over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And now it's like, yes, please, Daddy, spank me harder.
DOGE is dishing out spankings like daddy daycare. The Pentagon's being ordered to slash 8% of their budget. Shouldn't be that hard. They lost $6 billion in Ukraine, so when the war ends, we can go find it. I'm sure it'll all still be there. 6,000 IRS agents are getting doged Thursday. That'll unite Republicans and Democrats. Don Jr. just high-fived Hunter, and then he washed his hands. But bureaucrats are lawyering up.
I think it's so important for American people to understand what's happening. Their government, their watchdog agencies, the people who go to work every day to fight for them are being fired illegally in what is just a wholesale dismantling of entire agencies.
So what can you do now? Can you do anything now? Are you going to do anything now?
Of course. My colleagues and I are fighting back. Our union is already in court. They've brought a couple of cases that I think we'll see action in the next few weeks. And, you know, all I can say is that Elon Musk and the president picked the wrong bunch of lawyers to mess with.
That sounded like a threat. Nothing scarier than a white lady with a lawyer. Did you know Biden went to court and argued he had the right to fire everybody he wanted to in the federal government? Trump's firing folks using precedent from Biden. Trump doesn't just walk into a shop and pay full price. He haggles. All he's doing is bargain hunting. And the bargain's not for him, it's for you.
In order to save taxpayer money, it comes down to two things: competence and caring. And when the president was shown the outrageous bill for the new Air Force One, and then negotiated it down, if the president had not applied competence and caring, the price would have been 50% higher, literally 50% higher. The president cared, the president was competent, the price was not 50% higher as a result. And so when you add more competence and caring, you get a better deal for the American people.
Democrats claim they're compassionate. What's compassionate about debt? What's compassionate about kickbacks? We gave Congress the power of the purse, and they're getting robbed blind. And no one's ever called the cops. It's because it's not their money. It's yours. They don't care about your money, but we do.
You people still don't get it. You don't get it. I voted for Donald Trump, black Trump supporter, voted for Donald Trump to do what he's doing. Did you expect Donald Trump to do this? Not all this. Oh, it feels so good. That's how I feel. Do you like Elon Musk? Yes. Well, yes. Yes, I do. I'm watching Democrats tell me I thought Republicans like small government. Well, that didn't work, so we need Elon. That's why we got Elon. They help shrink it.
What Democrats don't get is DOGE is democracy. It's what we voted for. But it gets even better. Get ready for some DOGE dividends.
There's even under consideration a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt.
And welcome to Hannity, and tonight more in just a moment of my exclusive interview with President Trump and Elon Musk, moments away. First, I want to kind of take a moment here to reflect on all that's happening in the country, the Washington swamp. You know, for the first time in decades, real common sense, sanity is returning to our government. But don't expect the extreme radical left, the Democrats, the state-run legacy media mob to ever appreciate anything Donald Trump ever does. If he cured cancer tomorrow, they would still call him Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, and a racist. And now they extend that same warm welcome and courtesy to Elon Musk. Look, I don't usually agree with Jon Stewart, nor does he agree with me. I don't think he likes me, but I don't care. At least Stewart has enough intellectual honesty in him to realize the Democratic Party, they have lost the plot. Hook, line, sinker, gone. Take a look.
I'm very big on, and I know it's annoying, but specificity and nuance. And I think if you cry fascism at every administrative overreach, even the ones that are constitutionally okay, you will find yourself out of fascism bullets when the time really comes to remind people of, because you will, I think what the media has done over the last 10 years is cry wolf, to the point where they numbed everybody. It was an anesthetic.
He's dead on accurate. Can't argue with that. Democrats who cried wolf are not doing themselves any favors. Look, I argue maybe Fetterman's the only example. I argue almost the entire Democratic Party has become this woke Green New Deal extreme ideologues. In fact, look at this new Quinnipiac poll. Congressional Democrats are at their lowest approval rating in history at 22%. And meanwhile, a majority of Americans trust Donald Trump and Elon Musk to rein in our federal government. Trump has been regularly polling in the mid-50s. Rasmussen this week had Musk at an approval rating of 55%, and all for good reason. You know, in the course of meeting Elon Musk, I talked to him on the phone, never met him. It's not his money that impresses me, although it's pretty impressive, right? It's his incredible intellect, love of life, hard work ethic, incredible, brilliant brain power, accomplishments that any objective, clear-thinking person with common sense would be impressed with. This is a guy who's done incredible things for our country, for humanity. You know, think about what he's accomplished in his life. PayPal, Tesla. You'd think liberals would love Tesla. Now they're mad at Tesla. Starlink, he's got robotics. Starlink makes satellites available, communications available in over 100 countries. He was the chief engineer at SpaceX. You've got to be pretty smart to do that. This is the first company to launch astronauts into orbit, first private company. He dreams of going to Mars and so much more. In fact, Musk is sending SpaceX to rescue the American astronauts that are now stranded on the International Space Station. They're only supposed to be there 8 days. They're there over nearly 300. He also founded Neuralink. This blows me away. And a revolutionary company working in part to use AI to end blindness. And he's quick to help our fellow Americans in need, you know, like the people in North Carolina that had no communications. He sent Starlink over immediately, did the same after the California wildfires. So you got to ask yourself, and why? Why all this hatred? Why the rage from the left? Well, all right, first, the obvious, he's working with Donald Trump. They hate the sight, name, mention of Donald Trump. They get triggered. And number two, and they should really be embarrassed by themselves over this, because we played for you the other night. We played, let's see, Al Gore, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. You know, Washington has been talking about and giving lip service to eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse and corruption now for decades and decades. And let's look at your screen. Look at this. Look at this waste. You know, this is what DOGE and Elon Musk have uncovered so far. Billions in wasteful, horrific spending. Steve Miller was on Fake News CNN and asking, why are you not celebrating this accountability? Kind of epic. Take a look.
This president, for the first time in history, is committed to restoring accountability at every level of the federal government. You may assert there's no waste in the Pentagon. You may assert there's no waste in
Stephen,
Treasury.
I'm not
you may assert there's no waste in HHS.
That, Stephen, I don't think anyone...
Then why are you not celebrating these cuts? If you agree there is waste, if you agree there is abuse, if you agree there is corruption, why are you not celebrating the cuts, the reforms that are being instituted? Every day that no action is taken, the entire
Stephen, let's calm
salaries
down.
of American workers that are taxed disappear forever.
Now, I spent years of my early adult life living paycheck to paycheck, years and years. Wasn't fun. Keep in mind, the average American makes 66 grand a year. We have over $37 trillion in debt. That is not sustainable. Now, if smearing, slandering, you know, this American that is working for free to fix it, if this is the hill that Democrats want to die on and rob our children and our grandchildren of their future using your hard-earned tax dollars to pay for DEI musicals, transgender surgeries, LGBTQ, and wasting billions upon billions with shady left-wing NGOs and the radical Green New Deal, have at it, if that's what you represent. The Democratic Party this extreme would never win another election. But what worries me is that if the left keeps treating people like this, F Donald Trump, F Elon, you know, and the ridiculous, predictable singing and screaming and slogans, you know, they've been chanting since the 1960s. They're like in a time warp. Ask yourself, How many Americans in the future that are this successful are ever going to want to sacrifice massive amounts of money and want to serve their country? And look at after all they have done to Donald Trump and all they said about him, Jon Stewart nailed it. Guess what? Democracy won. Democracy's on the ballot. Yeah, well, democracy kind of lost the battle then by the American people. And they spoke loudly. And all this noise, you know, has rendered the legacy state-run media mob irrelevant because they don't tell the truth. And they just, you know, they bubble and fizz like Alka-Seltzer and water at the very sight of Donald Trump. You know, who's strong enough and willing to put everything on the line for service to their country? Now, we're kind of lucky and thankful. I'm a conservative. You can disagree with me politically. I don't care. You know, but Donald Trump, Elon Musk, are now sacrificing a lot. Trump risked it all. They're sacrificing for the good of the country because that kind of spending is unconscionable. It should shock the conscience and the soul of a nation. But after this latest wave of smears, you know, I'm sick of the oh-so-pious Democrats. They always have a monopoly on compassion and a love of science and progress and innovation. Did I forget to mention that Elon has a robot company and that will take care of menial tasks, and probably by the time when they go into mass production, maybe most of the middle class in this country will be able to afford it, all while ruthlessly they just want to tear down one of the great innovators in American history. The Democratic Party, they've just completely lost their way. Tonight, honestly, I'm going to be frank, I'm grateful that they graciously, meaning President Trump and Elon Musk, answered my questions about conflicts of interest. You know, the stupid question, I had to ask it, I'd get slaughtered by the media. Who's in charge? That was not an easy, that was not a hard answer to figure out. They know who's in charge. And they can't stop obsessing over Donald Trump. Now they can't stop obsessing and hating on Trump and Elon Musk. And they even were, I had no idea going into this interview. I'm grateful. I had no idea how long this interview would be. They allowed me to spend more than an hour speaking with them at the White House and then more time behind the scenes. I had no idea going in, you know, how long I had with them when we started. I'm lucky they did stay long as long as they did. After tonight's show, by the way, we are putting up on foxnation.com the full unedited interview. You can watch it all start to finish. It's on foxnation.com. But first, more of my exclusive interview with President Trump and Elon Musk. Take a look.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. As you know, it's super cold in NYC. I'd say Governor Hochul's face is frozen, but that would be redundant. This Saturday night, Kamala Harris will receive an NAACP Image Award for helping out people of color. They claim she did that by not becoming president. DOGE has stopped $10 million in U.S. tax money from going to Africa to fund male circumcisions. Not surprisingly, angry Democrats are calling it a dick move. During a recent presser, President Trump started listing the most insane examples of government spending. The most egregious one, of course, was the 6 figures spent to have Jerry Nadler's pants let out. Still didn't work. The stains. Australian wildlife officials have decided to euthanize dozens of whales that were stranded on a beach. And today, in fact, they had the difficult task of informing the whales' next of kin. I just have a Google search alert for whale stories. Saves time. Team USA Hockey wants Trump to attend their rematch against Canada this Thursday night. Trump said, if we win, we get Canada. And if they win, it doesn't matter because they still have to live in Canada. Suckers. While presenting an award at the BAFTAs, which is in England, Star Wars actor Mark Hamill's pants dropped to his knees. It looked pretty innocent until this little guy popped his head up from behind the lectern. Kentucky Fried Chicken is moving their corporate headquarters to Texas. In a related story, guess who just bought a place in Dallas? And finally, in Louisiana, 2 men were arrested for trying to smuggle drugs into a prison by shooting him out of a cannon. Authorities got suspicious when, for once, their drugs didn't taste like because they put them in their ass, guys. All right. Why do I say that? Unnecessary. It's no great revelation that the Democrats are screwed. They're lost, broken, and desperate. And in some cases, they're even decomposing. And they've apparently decided that what they need is their very own Joe Rogan, since trying to censor and smear the actual Joe Rogan didn't work. So they're sending out the billionaire bat signal, assembling them to create their own version of the cue-balled commentator. According to Semaphore, reps from George Soros' group and execs from something called Crooked Media met at the offices of Steve Jobs' widow to strategize on how their media efforts failed them in 2024. They saw how wildly successful Trump was by going on Rogan, and they want to get some magic for themselves. But let me save them some time, Dems. It's not going to work. First, you used to have a Joe Rogan. It was called Joe Rogan. Yeah. So why bother to find a new one when you'll just drive that one away, too? You're only going to punish and cancel anyone who might be a free thinker and not toe your doctrinal line. Anyone who might not fit within the narrow parameters of acceptable conversation is screwed. And any podcast audience will call bull the moment the guests announce their pronouns. We, they, them ain't having it. So how can you say you want something when you know you will destroy it or at least handicap it with impossible requirements? I'd rather listen to Rashida Tlaib getting a bikini waxed. Do you not understand that's how you lost Rogan to begin with and millions of voters? Look, the right doesn't agree with Rogan on everything, but that's okay. We live with that, and so does he. The problem for today's lefty media landscape is that they can't, because their ideas don't stand up to the scrutiny of a 5-minute segment, let alone a 3-hour podcast. But as Dems are desperately trying to find their leader in new media, they still got old media. Hell, the Crones on 60 Minutes started their careers using carrier pigeons. And apparently one of their recently fired wants traditional media to get in line and boycott the Trump White House.
When you have the White House banning the AP from the Oval Office, banning the AP from Air Force One, I think the rest of the press corps needs to start giving some serious consideration to whether or not it's worth, sending everybody into the Oval Office, sending everybody on Air Force One, sending everybody into the briefing room.
Well, that's some scintillating stuff. Poor thing. I guess he wants every journalist to be unemployed like him. But boycotting Trump coverage means boycotting themselves. I get it, though. They'd love any excuse not to cover all of Trump's wins, because right now our media mavens have that feeling you get when you're watching a stock you own dropping by the hour, and you realize that your pump and dump scheme is going down like Don Lemon at his next job interview. He's a terrible job interviewer. I don't see the... Your scam is up, media, and trust me, the hits are going to keep coming. Which raises this question. If the Dems were so certain that Trump's policies would fail, wouldn't they just sit back and let him fail? Their panic means they either know or they fear he will succeed and prove them wrong. And with Trump doing so much so fast, leave it to the never-Trumpers to do what little they can to make a fast buck. An event called the Principles First Summit convenes this weekend in D.C. What are their principles? Well, judging by the lineup, cashing in on whatever's left of Trump envy. The biggest and most bitterest names in the anti-Trump world will be there. Adam Kinzinger, Michael Steele, Bill Kristol, and George Conway. All that was missing was Joy Behar. And 16 green room coffee cakes. There are a few Dems to shore up the list of yesterday's pundits who've seen their audiences flee like Tim Waltz hearing a car backfire. So what you notice here is a sense of uselessness, a direction doomed to incompetence and frustration, but maybe a paycheck for the time being. These are the dinosaurs just after the big orange asteroid hit. But it's also about fear of change, a necessary part of life, which is why it's so weird to fear it. Everyone likes to be right, but that keeps us from seeing that we all share the possibility of changing when we ultimately aren't. The Never Trumper Conference meets under the title of Principles, but it's just a stubborn and sad refusal to look in the mirror, to admit that there is no way out as you continue down this narrow alley with no exit. It's no different than the left's search for a new Rogan. It's a dead end, one they chose because they were too scared to look at the signs staring them right in the face.